Hello and Guru Scott. On this video we're going to be doing some work on our front brakes on our 1997 Toyota 4Runner. And these are some of the various tools you might need to do front brake work, and we try to get out everything we could think of that you might need, because besides working on a 97 two-wheel drive 4Runner, perhaps you want to use this video as a guide to work on something like a Supra or a Corolla, Carina, you know, any of the Toyotas, or actually most any vehicle that you want to replace the front pads on. So the first thing is, I always wear safety glasses when I'm working. We strongly advise that you wear safety glasses and work in a real safe fashion. And in this video, we're going to try to show you how to work very, very safely. So let me talk about some of the tools you might need. You're going to need a dial indicator if you want to check the run out on the rotor. And here's another type of dial indicator. And you may also want to check to see how deeply it's grooved using this. And I generally never ever take a rotor down and have it turned. I just simply replace it. They're not very expensive. So we're going to look at these rotors. They're not that old, so if they do need to be replaced, we'll just go get new ones. I got some aerocoil here that we used because we're also going to replace the brake lines, not on this video, but on a companion video. So I pre-sprayed them with some aerocoil so that they'll come loose. They've been on the car for 20 years, or on the truck for 20 years. So we're going to clean that up real well with some 97% IPA before we take them actually apart, because it has to be done very cleanly. Here's some Mission Automotive silicone paste that we can use on the back of where the pads, where the piston meets the pad. You sometimes put a little bit of silicone paste back there, and that keeps the caliper piston from sticking to the pad. And you have to make really very sure that you don't get it on the pad or on the rotor. Here's some Pentosan made in Germany Super DOT4 brake fluid. Brand new container. You really don't want to use old containers because brake fluid is hygroscopic. It absorbs moisture. So once you open the container, it's only good for a few months. Some rubber gloves. Then I have a Lyle brake pad spreader. It's still in its container because I don't really ever use it. I have a different method. Here's a bearing packing tool that helps you repack the front bearings. On the 97 two-wheel drive 4Runner, the bearings are permanently sealed, but if you have to pack them, you want to use something like this, and you want to use a really good packing grease. Like in this case, this is some Royal Purple top of their line grease. If you're going to repack your bearings, if you have the kind that have to be repacked, you're going to need some seals. Most likely you'll have to replace them. They typically are one use only, and those are kind of difficult to do, so if you're not really familiar with how to do it, probably shouldn't start the job. But these are actually for a four-wheel drive Toyota, so we're not going to need those because this one, like I said, has permanently sealed ones. Here's some CRC disc brake quiet. We may or may not end up using this. You're going to need a good set of flare nut wrenches. I have some over here, some flare nut crow's foot wrenches that are going to allow us to use them as backing wrenches if we have to. And we'll also use some other various wrenches as we go along. We have a breaker bar with a special socket on it that we're going to use to break loose the lug nuts, then a torque wrench to torque them back on, and then some drift pin punches that will allow us to push the pins out for where the brake pads go, and I'll show you that later. Now, actually, you can get by with almost just 2 or 3 or 4 normal hand tools. I'm just trying to show you the amount of tools that you might need, and I like to be totally prepared because it's the 6 P's we learned in the military. Proper planning prevents piss poor performance. So that's what we want to make sure we have everything available to us before we start the job. So in a minute, I'm going to show you how to get this set up to work safely. So besides safety glasses, we want to make sure everything is so safe that there's no way you can get hurt. And so we'll be right back. So the first thing we recommend doing is we're going to be working on the front of the vehicle. So we recommend you chalk up the rear wheels. We got 4 chalks, 1 on each side of the rear tires. So they look like this. I'll pull one out. like this. You can buy them fairly inexpensively. Also, the emergency brake or e-brake we have fully engaged. If you have a manual transmission, you want to put it in the lowest gear possible, which is generally reverse or first. And then if you have an automatic transmission, you want to make it sure it's in park and that the parking lock is engaged in the transmission so the vehicle won't roll forward or backward. So now at this point, we're ready to move up to the front, and we're just only going to loosen the lug nuts on the front wheel. I'll show you how we're going to do that here in a second. Okay, so we're going to start with just this first wheel over here, and all we're going to do is loosen the lug nuts. We don't want to take them off, just loosen them such that when we jack this up, we can take them off pretty easy. Now these are normally put on around 75 to 78 or so foot-pounds of torque. So I'll just take them off like that, take them loose. Pretty easy. If they're not over tightened, it should be no problem at all. And these, fortunately, we did torque ourselves, so we know that they're good. So I'm going to get all this done, and then we're going to show you how to jack it up and how to set it up safely so that you can work on it such that it's not going to fall on you or hurt you, and you're going to have to be real careful sure that you've got several safety systems in place. So I'll be right back. All right, at this point we have this wheel able to spin freely, so we're able to take it off. But mainly I wanted to show you what we're using as our safety systems. So we have a main floor jack, and that is actually has some of the load on it. We have some pieces of wood there to keep from damaging the frame. We have a jack stand, heavy duty, that can easily hold this vehicle. That's also load bearing. And then we have another jack stand here that's our safety system. So if anything was to happen, the truck couldn't drop more than about 1/4 of an inch, and it'll catch it on that jack stand. When we take the tire off, we're also going to carefully slide it underneath the truck. And that is because when you're working over here, you're going to be partially exposed to the dangers of the truck falling, and you want to make sure that you never get hurt. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get it all set up. We're going to take this wheel off, slide it under, and then we'll come back and show you how we're going to do the work. Okay, so I have my dial indicator set up here. What I'm going to do is rotate this rotor around and see if we have any warpage. So I'm going to do that right now. So I'll start here and I'll go all the way around. And as you can see, it's very, very true. Also, I want to pull in and out, make sure we don't have a bunch of play, and we don't, which is good. That means this wheel bearing's in great shape, and it means the rotor's in great shape. Now the other thing I'm going to do is take my finger and go along the rotor and feel it, looking for any grooving, especially at the end. And since these rotors are only around 80,000 miles old, maybe even less, there's almost no wear on them at all. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to show you how to replace the pads. Okay, I'm ready now to go ahead and take out the old pads. Now, this is your bleeder valve for your system for this piece right here. So it should be an 8mm, and I normally take it and bleed it out so I can push the pistons back in. But I don't think I'm going to have to do that at this very second, so we'll come back to that later. The main thing I want to do is I want to take this spring off, and this actually keeps these two pins in place. It keeps them from sliding out, and the pins is what the pads are able to move around on, and this spring here is also captured by the pins, and this is what we call an anti-rattle spring. So I'm going to just simply pull these loose, and then I'll be able to take this off. And it slides out from underneath. So I'll get that done and I'll come right back. Okay, so here's what that piece looks like that I just took out. It grooves underneath this hole and then ties into the holes that are in these pins. So now these pins I need to push out, and since I have done the brakes in the last 80,000 miles, I can probably actually just push them out with my fingers. But I'm going to use a drift punch to gently tap them all the way out. That will release this spring here. I'll take it out and carefully set it down so I know it's relative position, then the pads just slide straight out. And I'll show you that here in a second. Okay, I wanted to show you on this picture using a drift pin or drift punch to push this piece out. So I've got it to the point now where That's why you wear safety glasses, by the way, because there went the anti-rattle spring that shot off. Looks like that. So the pin looks like this, and it goes in only one way. You can see there's a hole in it. That's for this side. And over on this side, some of them have a little capture piece here. This one has just a neck on it, but some of them actually have a little compressible piece that holds it into place. So all I gotta do now is take the other one out, and it looks like it'll just slide out probably with my fingers like that. And they should be identical to each other. And then the pads should pull out. Now I may have to end up opening the bleed valve and take them out, but I don't think so. Looks like they're gonna come out. So what I wanna show you here is the old pad. It's got about 80,000 miles on it. And here's the new pad. See the difference? Way, way much thicker. So what that means is we're gonna have to push those pistons on these calipers way, way in. Now, in order to do that, that brake fluid's gonna have to go somewhere. So it either go back to the reservoir, which we don't want because it'll overfill it, or we'll bleed the fluid off with a valve up here. And then what we'll do is, after we get done doing all of the brakes, we're gonna bleed the whole system. And that's on a whole different video that I have, so you can see that part. But so again, what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna take out the other pad. It should slide out pretty easy. And they just come straight out, but they get cocked sometimes. Anyway, I'll take it out, and then we're gonna come back and get a container and drain some of this fluid into it and start to push the pistons in by hand. I can generally just grab them like this and push them all the way in as long as I have this valve open. So we're gonna come back and get that done. Make sure you save these two pieces off the old pads. These are the backing plates and shims. They look like this. This part goes against the caliper pistons. This part goes against the back of the pad. And what these are for, well, partially for, is to keep the pads from rattling and making noise, because they have a great deal of flexibility within their area of movement. So they have some motion to them when you put on your brakes. So this is just part of the system to keep them from rattling. Same thing with this spring piece that goes in there. So now I'm ready to, like I say, open up the bleeder valve, but I've got to go get a container to put the fluid in, and I've got to get a hose and a couple other things. So I'll be right back. Okay, I misspoke earlier. This is actually a 10 millimeter bleeder valve. A lot of them are 8. Okay, well, this one's 10, so I have a 10 millimeter flare nut wrench on it. So what I'm gonna do is break it loose, which is easier said than done. I may have to put a socket on it to do that because this is pretty old and a little bit corroded. So what I'm gonna do is take this hose loose, put a socket on it, break it loose, and then I'll be able to use it. Okay, so I broke it loose using a socket because it was really stuck on there well. So now I can easily open it up, and what I'm gonna do is open it up and try to push these pistons in by finger and see if I can do that. And it looks like I'm actually not able to, which I may end up having to use my special tool. Another thing I do sometimes is I will put like a piece of material here to protect the rotor, and then I will gently wedge these backwards using a soft object like a piece of brass or something like that. So let me go see if I can find a brass rod or something I can use, and then we'll come back. Okay, with the bleeder valve open, I took a brass rod. Brass is a very soft material. It's not going to damage your iron, which is in both of these pieces. And you also want to make sure you don't damage the soft lips for the calipers, for the pistons. There's a seal here. You want to make sure you don't damage it. So all I did was I put the brass rod in here and just carefully pushed those pistons back with this valve open, which is very easy to do. If they don't move easily, then there's something wrong. Okay, so now I'm going to take some of this disc brake quiet. We've never tried it before, made by a company called CRC. And it says to apply liberally on the back of the pad itself. So I'm going to do that. I assume that means liberally, and then you rub it on and you let it dry for 10 minutes till it's tacky. So I'll get that done on both of them, and then we're going to come back and start to reassemble this. All right, so I got it something like that. Hope that's right. They don't really give that good of instructions. So this is the stuff I put on the back of the disc brake pad, and unfortunately I dropped off camera when I was showing it, so I'm sorry about that. So we're gonna let this dry for 10 minutes. I tried to spread it around sort of liberally without going off, and I'll do it to both of them and let them dry for 10 minutes till they get tacky, and then I'll start to reassemble it, and then I'm gonna use my other silicone lubricant to go up on the pistons. So I'll be right back. I'm ready to start the reassembly work. So this has been on here a few minutes, so it should be tacky. So what we've done in the meantime is we've cleaned these pieces up here. So basically it's going to go back together like this, where this piece goes on first, followed by this piece. And then I actually took some of this silicone paste and put it on here, just rubbed it in real lightly and took a cloth and wiped it off. So there's just a thin coating of silicone paste on here. And so that's all reassembled. And now I'm ready to slide it back into where it goes. So we're gonna change the camera angle and we'll show you that here in a second. Okay, so here's the assembly. And it doesn't matter which side it goes on as long as you get it sort of in the correct fashion. So it's going to slide in like this. And you want to make sure there's no grease on the pad part or on the rotor. That would be bad. And one thing I wanted to mention is when you get done with this brake job, it's really important you understand the brakes are not going to have the same stopping distance for the first 100 miles. So you have to either bed them in or just let them wear in so they match the rotors. And that takes a little bit of driving, so just be very careful. And when you first brake, realize that it's not going to stop as fast as it normally does. So I'm going to get the other one all put together and I'll pop it in here, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to start the final assembly. Okay, I had mentioned earlier that both the pads are the same. That actually is an incorrect statement. They are different. This one goes towards the outside. This one goes on the inside. So this one's all set up, and I'm actually going to insert it right now like this. So it won't be a problem. Then I'm going to get the other one set up and we'll insert it, and then we'll do the reassembly work. So I apologize for that statement. Most systems I work on, the pads are identical on both sides, but on the 4Runner here, they're different. Okay, so we'll just fix that and keep on going. So we'll be right back. Okay, again, the correction is this outside one has a little lip here. So I've got it all ready. I've got it set up with a thin coat of this Mission Automotive silicone paste here, wiped off the excess. So it's ready to install now in here. It should go in nice and easy, and it of course does. Now I'm ready to put in the pins, and I've also coated them with some grease from from Mission Automotive. And all I want to do is just start the pins in here to get them aligned and make sure everything is in its place. The pieces are all here, so that's good. Then I'm going to need to start working on holding this spring in place. So usually I do the bottom one first and push it in a little bit till it goes into the next pad. And then I'm going to take this anti-rattle spring and push it down and push in this pin, and I may have to get something to tap it in. So what I'm going to do is push them both through, and I also at the same time want to align the holes so that when I put the spring piece back in, this piece here, that I can get it to go into the holes easily. If not, you can always rotate them. So we're going to get that put together, and I'll show you how to put the spring piece on, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I have the anti-rattle spring in. It's all checked. Everything seems to be just perfect. Everything's fitting right. The rotor rotates easily. The last thing I have to do is put this spring in that holds everything into place. And it kind of takes a little finagling. You have to get this into one of the holes first, and then you have to get that in like that, and then you have to get this top one into the other hole. And I've tried to align it up, but I can't really do it without getting some light up here, so I'll have to just do it and I'll come right back. Okay, so this is now in place. You can see it's captured. Everything's good. The pins aren't going to come out. The anti-rattle spring's not going to come out. Everything's held into place. It's all ready now to be bled. I'm not going to bleed it because at this point we're actually going to replace our brake lines. That's going to be a separate video. But if you want to see how to bleed it, we do have a brake bleeding video we made, and you can refer to it. Basically, all you do is you make sure that the reservoir has plenty of brake fluid in it, brand new, and then while one person pushes down on the pedal, you open this up and drain the fluid into a container. Then you pull this up, and then the person lets up on the pedal. It's a two-person job. Or they do make brake bleeding systems. You can do it with one person. Anyway, that's all there is going to be for this video. Make sure you work safe. Thanks for watching. Tschüss.